Okay, so I'm going to start rolling the show here in a sec, and we'll be good to go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is a special weeknight edition of the RC After Hours podcast, and this evening we're very fortunate to be able to link up with our buddy out in the West Coast, and here he is. He's on screen now, Ben Harber. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Hey!
Yeah, there we go. Got your sound. I'm going to bring down that intro music. And I've wanted to get Ben on the show for a little while, and it's funny. You think I would have better luck with someone in the U.S., but with that 3-hour time zone difference, we were finding it very hard to connect to each other and just find a time when I could link in with you and you could get on the show and everything. But here we go. So you should be able to see everything going on there. Hey, it's Brian Chambers is watching live. I didn't really advertise this one because we didn't know when we were going to link up and get going. But hey, we're here now, and I'm going to put Ben into the hot seat. We're going to talk about some of his creations. I really want to get to know and see what he has done over the last couple of years. And, you've been on a few podcasts now. I know the last one you did was with the flight test one, and that's been a long time now. So,
yeah.
And I know we discussed it, I think, midsummer. And like I said, we just never quite got in there. Again, I'm just going to say a big thank you to all the new subscribers on the YouTube channel and all the new listeners to the podcast. The numbers are doing surprisingly well. As Chris, we used to say, this janky little podcast. It's still, I know it's me, and I know I try, and I know sometimes I don't quite get the 2-week window in. I try, boys. I tell you, I try. But we're still going to keep plugging away. The show is still going to keep going. Why? Because I can. We've got the technology. I've got a lot of guests already lined up for 2020, and I got a lot of projects that I think is going to keep the show invigorated, and the people coming to talk about it. It's kind of neat to talk about some of the variety and the different stuff, and that's where Ben comes in, because Ben does something very different. We don't often talk about the FOAMBOARD aircraft, and sitting behind me, for anybody who's in the visual and for the audio people, I will explain what I've done later on in the show, talking about some new projects for 2020, and probably my big project for 2020. So without further delay, and we've got a few other people on the chat, so if you have questions, don't fire them in right now, because I won't be able to catch them while I'm talking to Ben. That's the only problem with being a solo host, because I can't multitask and talk and keep an articulated conversation going. But again, thank you for all the Patreon subscribers. Thank you for hanging out with us. If you want those RC After Hours stickers, there's a link on the Patreon site, and the RC After Hours link, and it's in the show notes and everything. If you want your sticker and you're an existing Patreon, or you want to become a Patreon subscriber and get the stickers, there's a form and there's a method and everything, and I will be more than happy, and my friends out in the U.S. who are supporting us, John, he's more than happy to send out to people and get you everybody. Ben, I owe you stickers as well. I think you're on my list, and I will get you out some, because you were building a wing and I didn't have a sticker on the wing. I mean, goodness gracious. So we'll work on it.
I need my Blame Andre.
Yes, the Blame Andre and the RC After Hours. We'll work on that. And it's January, so things are going to be a little slow and everything, but we're still going to have a lot of fun. So yeah, enough about that. Enough about me. Enough about the show. Ben, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have someone on. Nice T-shirt.
Oh yeah.
So run us through someone who doesn't know you. How do you explain this hobby to somebody?
That's a good question. Explain the hobby to somebody. It is how I get a lot of creativity in my brain out into the real world uh, in a way that doesn't require aerospace level funding. Which, yeah, I do work for a big company. I don't want to talk about that. It's, I do the hobby because it's fun and I like to experiment. And that's what I loved when I came across and finally, found Flight Test and saw what they were doing with FOAMBOARD and hot glue. And that was just so right up, my alley. It opened up a whole new world of possibilities of what you can do, what you can imagine. So it's just really, really fun.
So, backtracking, have you always been in the RC hobby? Is this something that's kind of filled you in later on in life?
So, I mean, see, I started modeling. I've always done models, if not modeling. My dad and I built like the click together, plastic models from really as far back as I can remember. I used to build everything under the sun: cars, boats, planes, submarines. Excuse me. And so I always loved to build and kit bash and put stuff together and I mean Legos and all kinds of stuff. And I think when I first got into RC, it was a little bit later. It was in my teens. I think I was like 14 or 15 when I got my first RC model, and that was a stick 40 gas trainer, and had some guys at the local field help me maiden it because I'd flown. Oh wait, no, that's not true. That was my first powered model. My first entry into RC was slope soaring. And that was when about 14, 15. And my dad and I were walking around a local park called Fairview Park, which is where I still fly a lot, actually. And there's a site at the park where there's a dirt strip where you fly all the gliders and electric power. And then off sort of to the west at the park, there's a hill they call the Bluffs, and it sort of faces westish, southwest to the prevailing winds. So you can slope there when the wind's blowing. And we were walking around the park and we saw a bunch of guys with what looked like A-10 models flying around the sky with no motors. So it was all silent. And we see these like vaguely A-10 looking airplanes just beating the snot out of each other in the air. And they're literally just running, trying to knock each other out of the sky. Intentional midairs, and I'm like, what in the world? And it turns out one of the guys who lived nearby cut these kits out of styrofoam in his garage. And they were supposed to look like A-10s. And they called them the Carnage Saurus.
That's a great name.
And they were, I seriously, literally just a square profile block fuselage, a big old square Hershey bar wing with full span ailerons. The tail was a bent piece of coroplast with a steel rod to hold the shape in it, and two big standard Aerotronic servos up in the forward section for aileron and elevator, and rubber band the wing on, and away you go. And so I think my dad bought me one of those for $20, and you cover it with packing tape and stuff some gear in it, and I was in the air. And I was, then the rest is history, I guess, as they say. So I did sloping for a while. I did, and it's funny looking back on that particular model. I don't think I had it for a few months before I started thinking of ways to change it. And in order to get my dad more into it, because he wasn't really an RC pilot, the first mod I did is I went down to the local hobby shop and I bought some replacement wings for a small airplane that had a similar wing cord to the Carnage Saurus. And taped them or glued them on with a brace and made this big flat A10 wing into a polyhedral wing with these like 1.5 foot tip extensions, and then extended the tail longer so I had more tail arm. And so I made a giant soaring version of the Carnagesaurus.
There you go.
Like a thermal model. So, but it still only had it only had the ailerons now on the inboard part of the wing. So the roll response was incredibly dumbed down. So it was actually a really good trainer. So
Nice.
it was really sluggish. And I think it was probably like a 6-7 foot wingspan by the time I added the wingtip extensions. And so I'd fly it at the bluffs, and then sometimes we'd fly it down at this other another place at the beach. And whenever I flew it at the beach, I'd get chased by seagulls, and not like maliciously, but they just would like link up with me and sort of just follow me around the sky, like in formation. Because I was this big white bird that was just silent, sort of, riding the wind. And I think I still have some pictures somewhere that he took.
So
it's pretty funny.
So it's interesting because you do some pretty incredible work and some pretty incredible designs, but do you draw? Okay.
Do I draw?
No. Do you draw from where do you get the most excitement from making something that's simple and almost archaic versus something that's super technical? What is that, which one's going to make you the happier pilot, the happier creator?
Oh man, that's a hard one. It probably depends on my mood when I come up with the idea. I think I don't know. I'm really actually quite drawn sometimes to the super simple, because it's a different challenge in and of itself to try and do something rather complicated, like control an airplane in the sky, but to do it really simply.
Mm-hmm.
That actually is that's kind of part of where if you remember the baby Bugatti that I came up with for when Orchard was doing his Bugatti build. The Bugatti as a subject is not the simplest thing as a source material, but when in my birthing of the baby Bugatti, that's a weird sentence. I intentionally sort of forced myself to not add stuff to it, either in mechanical or electrical complexity or in design complexity, because it was intentionally a exercise in simplicity. And how can I make something that looks like this crazy awesome design, but excuse me, but is also approachable to almost anyone.
Nice.
So it's a one sheet build with 2 servos, and it'll fly on 2-cell or 4-cell, and it can either be very nice or a heart attack to fly. I guess I'm gonna cop out, and I'm gonna say I like both the simple and the complex, but for very different reasons.
Well, that's it. And I think we all kind of go through these design seasons, and there's just points where I want to build and build and build, and then there's times where I just can't even bring myself to pull out a knife and just I've got some wicked ideas, and just finding the time to do it and do it right. And but it's interesting because my scratch build, if I look back at some of the old photos, and we in the collective group chat, we'll go back, and some of the stuff that I did early on, and you're like, wow, this is this was pretty archaic. And then you look at other planes and go, if I had just known a little tiny bit more, that would have been a success, and you can kind of look at the evolution of stuff. What was one of your more devastating failures in design?
In design, hmm. Ooh. Oh man, I don't know. I mean, one of my most devastating failures, period, was the Valkyrie crash, the first one.
Yeah.
Which actually I never put out any video of it. And don't lament that because it's really not that exciting. It trundles down the runway and gently gets pushed to the left by a 5-knot crosswind, and then just goes full throttle into a chain link fence and like a cheese grater.
Foam board.
That's
Foam
when
board.
that's when I learned the power of a little bit of wind over a long area of nose.
Yeah. And
but
no rudder system on that aircraft, right?
No, I did. I just had it. I had it on low rates, and I did not properly do a good pre-flight, checkout, and honestly, I didn't pay attention to the crosswinds. I should have been. I was too caught up in getting in the air, and but in design. Oh, actually, okay. I don't know how much I know I put some videos out on this, but after a lot of the Super B, Angry B, Turbo B funniness, I wanted to push the envelope further, and I'm like, okay, I've got this, modified Super B, and I'm making it go faster. And how can I minimize the airframe around it to just make it just pure motor and prop and go? And so I made what I call the Super V. I think I showed this somewhere, but it basically was a forward swept flying wing.
Okay.
With a little bit of nose to hold the battery, but the motors were mounted on the wingtips, which it sounds crazy. And it was, but the advantage of mounting the motors on the wingtips over a forward swept wing is it helps you get the CG forward, which is good. And then it had a single vertical tail, and then a small nose pod, or central battery bay, basically battery pod. And on paper, it was fine. And I made glider models of it to test the CG, and that worked. But when I went to actually fly, it was super squirrely in pitch. I had counter rotating propellers, so I didn't have any adverse, I didn't have any torque roll problems. But in the implementation of it, the reality did not bear out the way the theory did. And there's a lot of good reasons for that in hindsight when I look at it. I was still using a flat bottom, high cambered airfoil. It would have worked better as something with a reflex or symmetrical airfoil. But it was a good lesson in, okay, here's an idea. The math says that this should work. Well, when you actually put it into practice, it flew okay on 3-cell, but ultimately I wanted it to go to 6-cell and be a crazy speed machine. And it was not going to go anywhere. That's when I kind of had to take a step back, and I took a break a while from doing anything with that power plant. And eventually that became the Yellow Jacket, which started off the whole Blame Ben speed freak, race between me and Josh Finn. So then the Yellow Jacket grew into the Red Line, and yeah, they look more like normal airplanes because guess what? Normal airplanes are more stable.
Yeah. You get to a point in that speed that the state, your control surfaces. And so do you, when you're looking at something that you're pushing for speed and everything, do you have to factor in, I remember some of the old videos with Josh Bixler talking about the good part about the foam board was there was enough grain in the paper, particularly in the white paper, that it would dirty up the air, and therefore you've got some bite over those control surfaces. And I remember him saying at one point when they brought in the water resistant foam board, the planes got a little bit more slippery and they were noticing some different tendencies.
I don't know that the surface, you mean actual surface finish?
Yeah.
Of the paper? I don't know. There's probably some. So in air performance, they call that viscous drag. The effect that the air flowing over the actual surface, just the or scrubbing drag
Yeah.
rather, not viscous. Viscous is how they analyze the math. Yeah, scrubbing drag. Um, so there's probably some difference. I don't know that it's going to be that noticeable. It might be more. I mean, as far as speed goes,
Mm.
unless until you get up really up into the higher end of things. I bet. I mean, it's definitely possible that he could have noticed a difference in handling qualities because the scrubbing drag over a surface affects how much resistance it has in a given orientation, and so if a certain material has a certain level of scrubbing drag, then it's going to imply a certain amount of sorry, I'm tripping over my mouth. It's going to affect the center of pressure in a certain way, and so if that changes, then that's going to affect the center of pressure location, and that can affect the stability and handling qualities.
Nice. Now, okay. Now we're talking. We're talking probably stuff that affects real size. Now, do you actually see when you're looking at this? Do you actually see a lot of this information still present in a smaller aircraft, like an RC designed aircraft?
Um, in terms of like the drag considerations and such, or
Yes, yeah. Like in everything where like your center of pressures and
um,
everything.
you know, the center of pressure and all that kind of relationship, that all scales. So if you have an airplane at this scale, or well, let's go the other way around. Take a full size aircraft and scale it down linearly. Um, all things being equal for mass relationships, if you have the CG in the same scale position and uh, everything else is the same, the center of pressure is going to be the same. Now, your performance and handling are going to be totally different because the performance of the airfoils doesn't scale.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest differences. And the at our Reynolds number, at our scale, the flat bottom sort of, I call it the trapezoid airfoil that the typical flight test fold over wing has, is kind of flying under the radar of a lot of aerodynamic ills. At our scale, it doesn't really matter because if it makes lift, it's fun. And,
Yeah.
Full stop.
We'll make it
That's
work.
And it sort of just pushes through everything else. In the realm of things that Josh Finn and I are pushing towards, getting up to over 100 miles an hour and beyond, you're starting to get into a higher Reynolds number where the airfoil shape and even the trailing edge of the wings matters. So the blunt trailing edge that you'd have on almost every foam board model is fine. It's totally doesn't make a difference on performance for 90% of the foam board models that I've ever flown. But for things like the Red Line and Finn's Sharknado, I'm actually in the process of building his right now, and I don't know how he did his trailing edges, but on the Red Line that I built, I took aluminum tape and put aluminum tape on the trailing edges of all my flying surfaces, so the wings and the tails.
Okay.
And I shaved. I gave a really shallow bevel on the trailing edge, and then put aluminum tape across the top and bottom on the trailing edge, so I had a razor trailing edge, and so that it reduces your base area, and every little bit counts in drag as you go up in speed.
Yeah. Now, are you doing any modeling because of the technology you have access to, or is this just all in your head and trial and error?
For all of my hobby stuff, it's all mostly trial and error. I don't really, I mean, even at work, I don't. It's not my job to do the sort of CFD analysis kind of thing. I work in a field called configuration, so it's actually a lot of the same kind of things that you do when you are coming up with a new RC model. I'm in the design and 3D modeling, and I'm putting the whole airplane together from a high level perspective. And then other people who are much smarter than me in all of the specific areas, they do all the analysis, and then we work together to iterate and make things better. But at home, I do use a 3D modeling program to do many of my designs, because it helps me do the layout. Because I think in 3D, I think in that way, in that space, and then once I've got it worked out how I want it to, be when it's done, then I'll start to chop it apart in the modeling program, and then unwrap it, unfold it, and make plans that I can actually print out and then cut out from, or if I can have access to someone with a laser cutter, then I'll make friends with them and have them cut me a few laser files.
Nice. So design-wise, I'm going to ask you another really good question. Do you prefer something that you're creating from your head, or do you like to take a model that pre-exists and engineer that into the foam board world?
I think based on my prior performance, I prefer to take existing things and recreate them. I haven't come up with many original things. I did the A4. I mean, I did a bunch of jets that are all existing.
Yeah.
I've done the Commuter, which is based on the 150, and the Stearman, which is hopefully upcoming, maybe soon. But as far as my own, I'm looking around. I don't know why I'm looking around. There isn't anything around me that's gonna. I don't know. I do like to come up with new things, but I guess when it comes to doing foam board stuff, there's a lot of challenge fun in just taking something that exists and making it real at this scale and real in this form, and making it something tangible that you can play with, as opposed to just looking at pictures or watching it fly around. And even with a lot of the jets that I built, a lot of people only see them in pictures or videos. Like an A4 or an F4, they're hardly even flying anymore. I mean, I don't know that there are many flying models of Phantom 2s out there. I'm sure there's a few, but to be able to take something like that from history and bring it back, to life is really fun. Lately, I've been kind of taking a break. I think I haven't been doing a whole lot new design stuff. I kind of got burnt out a bit after I crashed the red line.
It happens. It happens because you sit there and go, how many hours is this going to take me to resurrect a new design, right? Or a new model? Yeah.
Well, I guess the red line is one example of my own design. The red line and the yellow jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the last couple of years, you've been coming to Flight Fest, and you've been producing some pretty amazing things between the F-16, the Viper, the A4, the F4, and then the B-52. Now, of those, what was your ultimate favorite?
Oh, but a B-52 by far. I mean, absolutely no contest. That was such a fun project. Man, I really kind of lament not flying it more, actually.
Yeah.
It's funny to think back on it now. I mean, we spent, it wasn't just me, it was me and 8 other people probably over 3 days, built the thing, and then I flew it twice.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I'm glad that Flight Test took it and continued to fly it, and then took it apart and did all kinds of crazy stuff with it. But that definitely is one pinnacle that I'm always going to look back on with a lot of fond memories. For one fact, that it really the genesis of what showed up and flew at Flight Fest was very much a joke to start with. It was, and very much, and kind of an accident. Because I had done, like you mentioned, the Viper before.
Yeah.
And I had sort of unveiled it. I did the Viper for Dan Sponholz because he kept poking at me, because I did the A4 and then I did the F4 and F5, and he's like, "Hey, when are you going to do an F16?" Because he used to work on F16s. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I did the F16, and then I surprised him with a special Thunderbird skin that Steven Rosema did. Did I say his name right?
I think so. And then they all got wet and damp.
Rasterize.
Rasterize. Yeah. Yes. Let's just go with code. Let's go to form names.
So
Yeah.
I did the F16, and I scaled the F16 to be the same scale as the A4 in my lineup, so that I had all my jets at similar, scale and size. But then I did a small, I do air quotes for those listening, B-52, which turned out to be a 7-foot wingspan.
Yeah, small 7-foot wingspan.
Not that small, and I swear I did not plan even that one to be that big. And since we're in story mode, so I'm just going to go into it, right? The origins of the 7-foot B-52 are me and the propulsion engineer that I work with at work were talking about what we could do with a bunch of small motors, because I told him I had a bunch of these tiny little motors.
Yep.
The Gremlin 1106 motors. He didn't know what that was, but we all know what that is. And I said, okay, what would it scale to if I used one of these tiny motors? And he's like, all right, let's do the math. So we worked out the scale simply based on engine diameter.
Yep.
And the smallest props that I could conceivably put on the motors, which were 1.9-inch 4-blade props. And even at that tiny, to me, seemingly tiny scale, the B-52 is so massive that scale is a 7-foot wingspan. And when I told him that, he's like, well, dude, now you have to do it.
Yeah. 7 foot seems manageable. Completely manageable.
So that grew. So that became the first B-52, which plans are on the flight test forums for that one. And it uses the little 3D printed duct that I made for the Gremlin motor. And that airplane, a 7-foot wingspan airplane, at the time it was one of the biggest ones that I had made. It only weighed 5 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
It flew on a single 3,000 milliamp 4-cell. And so fast forward a little bit, Keegan Sponholz and I were chatting about the F-16 and the B-52, and he's like, oh, dude, we should fly the Buff and the F-16s in formation, because that's a thing that they do in real life. And I'm like, well, the scale's wrong. We've got a 7-foot B-52 and a 40-inch or a 30-inch F-16, and we were chatting on Facebook, and I did some quick math on the side, and I figured out, oh my goodness, they are literally almost to like the second decimal point, a 1/2 scale off. So the F-16 at its scale was twice as big as it should be. So I said, well, Keegan, you either got to make the F-16 half as big or the B-52 twice as big. And he's like, gee, which one are we going to do? And
come on, a half-size F-16? What could go wrong, right?
I know, 16-inch wingspan F-16. Yeah,
long dart.
Josh. So thus began the road towards the 14-foot B-52. And it only, before I get too off track, I got to say thanks to Josh Bixler and all the guys at Flight Test for supporting that project, because it would not, and John Overstreet too. Yes. It would not have happened without Monster Foam, without them they lasered the file. So I took my 7-foot B-52 plans
×2,
and I didn't redesign anything. I literally hit 2x on the scale factor. I had to cut it up differently into how it laid out on the 30 by 40 Monster Foam sheets, but I laid it out so that so that I could give them DXF files so they could just shoot it in their laser and spit out foam. And John Overstreet helped them do that. And so I got a stack of foam at Flight Fest and a stack of electronics, and I brought 120 feet of wire.
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. And because motor extensions are a thing, you got all the ESCs. Excuse me. All the ESCs were in the center fuselage, and so I had to run the 3 phase wires out to the wings.
How many motors?
Times.
8 times. There you go. 8 times 12. 8 times 3. Sorry.
Yeah, 8 times 3 times the inboard motors. I think were 4 foot from the center line, and the outboard motors were like 7 feet or 6 feet. I don't know, something ridiculous. Yeah.
Yep. But then we stumbled upon a piece of technology that's probably going to really change what we're seeing in the next little while. And
yes.
yeah, I mean, and it's bringing, hopefully, because this guy here likes to fly his jets, and he does eventually has to build one. But yeah,
yep.
You found something, and we found, and John again has been helping to push the boundaries of what works. So we, you know, and boy, and it all stemmed from this little idea.
Yep. It's the BDF has become a fun, happy accident out of the B-52, and I still remember I think it was before we even flew the first time, before we flew the B-52 at Flight Fest. Josh and I were talking in the hangar, and he asked, what's the thrust on these? So we just start talking about these ducted fans, which originally I had just scaled up from the 2-inch version, and then I've improved it and made some modifications to the stators and how the motors mount. And but being able to have a 4-inch ducted fan that runs off of a very relatively inexpensive and very available motor class, the 22 something size motors, and be able to get efficient thrust out of that is kind of a game changer. And then John really pushed it further and is able to he's able to prototype and test in a way that I could. I mean, I really kind of, you can't fault the guy. I mean, his job is prototyping. So, I mean, it's, I look at him like, gosh, why can't I build like that? Well, if it was my job to build all day long, then I'd probably be building.
If you
like
had
that.
The resources and the hangar and everything. Yeah. The stuff that comes out. But
his ability to iterate on something and try it out. And, we would be messaging and he'd be trying out the F-16 or his F-16 that he originally, made for a 70 mil EDF, just like I did, scaled it up to hold the 4-inch BDF, and started playing with it and started burning out motors. And we try to figure out, okay, why? Is it the inlet? Is it the nozzle? So he would be out there, and we'd be messaging over just, the course of maybe 1 or 2 days, and he'd be already through like 4 different ideas.
Yeah.
That here, try this or try that, cut a hole here, add some cheater holes there. And we got to where it is now. And it's really, really kicking butt. It's pretty reliable. And the F-18 version is even cooler.
Yes.
Because it doesn't add a whole lot more mass in foam, but you're doubling your thrust. So your thrust to weight performance is way better on the Super Hornet. Which is really, really cool. And then the added wing area, the thing floats for days. It's really, really cool.
You know what? There's a model. Yeah. There's a couple that when they come out, I can't wait. I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to have time. I've got an A10 in the back that I've got to do a BDF. The really nice, important thing that I want to stress to anybody listening is the BDF is when you start running the financial numbers on this thing is going to get people into EDF jets. Now, okay, you're still going to, if you're going 6S, it's still going to cost you the money to get the 6S, but the cost of the ESC and the motor combination alone, you're going to be very pleasantly surprised. And I think that's going to be the most amazing thing, because you're going to be able to fly a jet and you won't have to sit there and buy an EDF motor. You won't have to buy an EDF, a rated like an 80 amp ESC. So it's
Yeah.
really going to be cool to see all this go.
Well, and I got to poke a little bit on the battery side too. If you want to go to, big 6S batteries, you can, but part of what Josh had originally asked me to do was
Yep.
would prove out, can you fly this on, not those crazy batteries? And so the A10, I actually built the FT A10.
Yep.
And I closed up the gear pods and I put the BDFs in the nacelles and actually built it out that way. And it flies on simply two 2200 3 cells in series.
Yeah.
So it's literally the same battery that I put one of those batteries in the Stearman, or you can throw it into a Simple Cub.
Yep.
Anything else, that flies on a 2200 3S, you can just have a box of 2200 3Ss, and either you put them in by themselves or you put them in your BDF jet in series.
Yep.
And
off you go.
I mean, again, because like you said, the amp draw you're not up in the 80 amp range, so you don't need those bigger capacity high C batteries.
Yeah.
It runs off of a 35 amp ESC.
Yeah. And the nice thing too is if something happens and you do damage it, you haven't damaged a 6S pack that's worth, $100. You've damaged a $20 3S 2200, or something like that, depending on where your sources are. Everything costs more money in Canada, so yeah. So that has been, like you said, it's a happy accident. And as a jet guy, I'm like, this is awesome, because I haven't been out flying a whole lot yet this winter, but it's like I need to get my A10 flying. So then I do have all these 6S packs, so why not?
Mm-hmm.
Get some jet flying in over the holidays and have so much fun. So,
Yeah.
You know what, man? I congratulate you, because for me, that's like one of the biggest, hugest things, and it's going to change how we view a lot of the upcoming products, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm excited to see them actually come out. Actually, I was just flying. I'm looking to my side. I can't really put it behind me because it's too cumbersome. But I was just flying the A10 this past weekend, and I modded mine to have Fowler flaps, which is really fun.
So you just get in there and slow it right down and everything.
It slows down. It slows down so good, and then you wouldn't think, because with a big prop, they're known for their low end punch. EDF's not so much. But with the BDF fans on the A10, I can slow it down with the Fowler flaps and then flick the flaps and mash the throttle, and it just goes vertical.
Nice.
It's so fun.
And it's funny because I was working on when Motion released the airliner, I actually did a little mashup in just a really terrible 3D mashup, and the whole principle was, if I'm gonna land an airliner in the snow with an EDF, I run the risk of destroying blades. With a BDF, if I snap a blade, I've snapped a 50-cent prop. Okay, a 50-cent 3-blade 4-inch prop. I got it. You can buy them, you can buy bags of these for pennies. Swap it out and go. It's funny, I'm watching some of the comments, and Lee Davis just said, well, we definitely need a flight test Avro Aero. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that would. Now, I did something like that years ago. It looked basically like an Avro Aero. It was really poorly done, but that was 3S 64 mils, and I've got all the other ones, but like I said, bang for buck. Yes, your scale is a little bigger than, say, a 70 mil, like a 4S 70 mil EDF, but we all know too, it's not much more work to make that aircraft just that little bit bigger, and you get the results of it, like you said. So
But when you go up in scale like that, you get the advantage of the added area.
Yeah.
The returns actually only benefit when you're designing for a lightweight, efficient power system like the BDF. If you were to scale up to a 4-inch EDF, that's 101 or 101 millimeter
it's
EDF.
Ridiculously
if
big.
If you were to design an Avro Aero for 4-inch or for 100 millimeter EDFs, that would be a fast, heavy beast.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna need 115 amp ESCs. You're going to need probably 8-cell power.
Yep.
I mean, it's going to just spiral in the heavy direction, and it would be awesome.
Yes.
But it would be a completely other animal. The same size airplane designed around a 35 amp draw, 4-inch BDF. Even what is it? Is it a quad motor? The Avro? Is it 4 engines
twin.
or 2?
Twin.
It's a twin. Okay.
Yeah. Iroquois.
So you design it around that. You get up to that scale when you don't have to design for the weight and just the sheer mass of all that battery for like the 8-cell battery and the big 150 amp ESCs. You can lighten up the internal structure airframe. You can make a very, very light airframe because you're carrying around, again, 2,200 3-cells, probably 4 of them. And then the area of the wing, just the whole thing. I mean, it would be a kite.
Well, this is it, and that's the Aero. The Aero is just like a giant Delta Wing style aircraft. So, I mean,
yep.
The F-18 that John designed flies so well, and things like reinforcing the elevators with the wood and stuff like that, so you can get in there and just flick those ailerons like crazy, sort of the elevators, and make that aircraft flip around. The Avro would just be this big, giant, beautiful monster. I'm gonna have to call John after.
You would probably have to wait for low wind conditions and only fly it in early mornings because it would be so buffeted by the wind.
Yeah.
Because it would have such low wing loading at that size. Like for instance, the 14-foot B-52, we did the math on the cubic wing loading, which for those who don't know, the square wing loading, like ounces per square foot or pounds per square foot, is a measure of it's just the weight of the aircraft divided by the area of the wing, which if you're talking about two airplanes of similar size, it's a good comparison. But when you're comparing two airplanes of very different size, wing loading doesn't help you. But cubic wing loading is a way you can compare two aircraft of very different scale and get an idea on how their handling compares, even when they're not of similar scale. So we did the cubic wing loading comparison for a B-52, and it has the same cubic wing loading as a balsa backyard truck glider. That's how lightly loaded the structure is, because that 14-foot airplane weighed 32 pounds.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And flew great, but so you're saying if the winds kicked up enough, you would have been fighting a lot more.
Well, that's why I wasn't flying it at noon.
Yes.
On even the second day.
Gotcha.
The first day we flew it at right before sundown because we had just finished it and I just wanted to fly it.
Yeah.
And I looked at the winds and it looked good and we were fine, so we flew. But the second day, I could have flown it at any point during that day. It was ready to fly, but I didn't want to fly it. I mean, it was too windy, and it wasn't too windy to fly basically anything else, but it was too much for that one until.
And for people that don't know, the problem we run into with the way Fury Field is set up, most of the time the wind is pushing across the runway, pushing the aircrafts back towards the pilot. So when Ben is trying to land his 14-foot wingspan, the tarp, the runway that we lay down is significantly wide enough, but that aircraft took up every square inch of that runway as far as from left to right, So I mean, it looked great, but like you said, why put that extra risk? Speaking of chuck gliders, Bill Decker wants to know what's the one behind you? Yeah.
That is, so I'm pointing behind me for those who are listening.
The flare.
That's a flare DLG. It's a used one. I think that particular airframe is one of the early concept, like prototyping airframes, because I got it for a stupidly cheap price when it comes to DLGs. The thing about the flare is it has not only trailing edge flaperons, it also has leading edge flaps, or droop slats. So it does have a fifth servo. And for people who don't know DLGs, doesn't make sense, but you have two servos, for each flaperon on the trailing edge, and then normally you just have rudder and elevator, so it's a 4-servo plane. The flare gives up a little bit in adding weight, so you add a fifth servo, but what it allows you to do is you can deflect the leading edge of the wing and get even more camber tailoring and camber control on your wing. And so you can basically hang on to that, just every last little bit of lift.
That's
it's a really, really cool concept.
neat.
And it's all carbon. I mean, it's all molded. It's insane that they can do this movable leading edge on a molded carbon wing, and the airplane still is competitive in DLG weights. It still weighs less than 9 ounces.
Crazy.
It's insane. Yeah.
Crazy.
It's just for fun for me. I don't go into competition, but I love being able to fly it, which I haven't in a long time.
So I pulled up the Flight Test Commuter store for your airplane that you designed and they sell.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the genesis of this question is, what does your crystal ball show for you for 2020? Well, where are some of your interests? Are you going to try and do something else like this and do a community build and push it through the store, or are you just happy to have fun and create to your heart's desire?
Yeah, so I do hope that I can put some more things in the store. I mean, not just me, but submit through the community build process, and that's why I mentioned the Stearman before.
Mm-hmm.
If people have been following my channel, you've seen me fly the Stearman. I had one of them out at Flight Fest. I actually left it there, so I don't know if it's still in the store building or where it ended up, but there's a Stearman in Ohio somewhere because I couldn't take it home. For the people watching, I have the red one here next to me.
And what I'll do for the show notes is I will put his information in there, and he's up full screen to see. Now, this is a full foam board design with a 3D printed radial cowl, which looks amazing. What's the wingspan on the Stearman? Yeah.
40 inches.
Nice.
So it's a 40-inch biplane. It's all foam board. Now, this red one, I'll keep it up here for a bit for people watching can look at it. I did go to the crazy degree of actually adding the wing rigging,
mm-hmm.
which I don't know if you can even see in the video, but I used a bunch of carbon rods and hot glued them in place.
Nice.
And it just adds that little extra, level of detail. So I will not presume to speak for Flight Test or any of them, but I think I can share. I've given them the plans. Josh has my design for this, and we've talked, and they're definitely interested. They're doing 100 things at once all the time, so I don't know what the time frame is on it, but it's definitely something that I would love to see come out. There have been a couple people who I've given the plans to help beta build it, and so far they've built them with very little input from me, which I think means that it could work.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that'll come to fruition. For my own design stuff, the rest of this year, I don't know that I have a whole lot else planned. I'm really looking forward to the one of the jets. I'm not sure. Probably the Overstreet BDF F-16 will come out at some point this year. I'm guessing. I don't have insider information. But the F-16 and the F-18, I'm really excited to see them come out. So I'm excited to see more and more stuff with the BDF. And I haven't talked to Josh about this, but I would imagine that there is a healthy appetite for like a mod kit for the FTA-10 to put BDFs in.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it works really well.
Yeah. Well, this is it, and it's funny because that plane. I flew one of the early betas or the one they had in Texas and loved it. And then I'm like, yeah, this needs as much as those props, and they were fun. I mean, it just needs that sound, it needs that look and everything. So it's going to be interesting. So I will have to, once I get through my project, which is sitting behind me, that one is next on my build list. So, cause that's a pretty easy and fun build. But geez, nothing wrong with the Stearman. God, I seem to have a thing for biplanes this year. It was funny. One of the jokes that someone said to me was 2020 will be the year that Andre flies all his biplanes and all his jets. And it's just one of those weird combos. It's like fast, slow, but so it's,
Well, I have a similar thing. I mean, with, the speed race between me and Josh Finn, and so I mean, John Overstreet has got his jet designs that are designed around now the BDF. I had also done an F-18 design that I never put plans out, but I don't think I did. I didn't want to muddy the waters with what was going on, but I still have a raw, like unbuilt set of parts for my F-18 kit. And one idea that I've had is to do, I don't know if it needs to be like a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe thing or not, but I would love to try and build that out using some of the. Have you heard of JP Hobby EDFs?
Yeah, I think so.
They're all metal alloy EDFs, and they're just insane performance.
Talking 12S,
and I would love to do probably at least 8S. But it would be really, actually no, I think they're only 6S.
Oh, that's even easier.
6 or 8, I'm not sure.
Yep.
But it would be really cool to build my the F-18 that I designed, put these ridiculously high performance all metal EDF. So all metal EDF in an all foam plane. That's a
could go wrong?
Idea I have in my head. But yeah. So I got to figure out how to fund that, because each, one of those motors is like $200. And then forget, then not even to mention batteries and ESCs. So that still is an idea in the back of my head.
Nice. So we're having a good time here. I'm actually gonna pop in and we're gonna start some of this. We're gonna put you through the hot seat. I'm gonna limit the number of questions because I think we've been through a lot of them. But I always have fun doing this because what you described, I'm really enjoying the conversation as far as design, and I'm hoping it's a little bit. Sometimes people ask for fun, entertaining shows. Other times people want a good technical show. And Ben, man, you come out swinging for a technical show. And like I said, it's just something that we've been needing to do, to talk about everything that's going on. And then I'll discuss this one and a few products that have come out recently. So, all right, Ben, are you ready for some hot seat questions? Are you worried? Oh, I got
Probably
the bell.
not, but let's go.
All right. So we'll try and keep them fast and quick. I'll hit the
bell.
What are
the rules?
What are the rules? You got to answer these quick. Usually we ramble on, but we've talked a lot already. Actually, it's been a really good show so far, so hey. But I have like a whole whack of questions. I have a random number that I draw, and I ask you the questions, so we'll have some fun. We'll see how we go. All right, so random generator, here we go. Question number 16. Self-learned or instructed?
Mostly self-learned, but also instructed at key points. For instance, DLGs. I got a lot of instruction from guys at the field, and actually one of the guys who I ended up working with at work I could not have set up a DLG without his walking me through it. And when I started, definitely taught. As I go on, I just like to try stuff.
Nice. All right. Number 7. Oh, hey. Oh, this is going to be easy. Pre-built, or are you a builder? Do you actually own anything? Well, besides the one behind you, I guess the DLG, do you actually own any other aircraft that are... You do! You got something recently.
I do. It's in the other room. Yes. So 99% I'm a builder. I have one ARF in the house now. And it was the one that my friend found at a thrift store.
Nice.
And so it wasn't even an ARF to me. It was already pretty much built. I had to replace a couple servos and the wheels, patch a hole on the side of it. But yeah, I have a little, I think someone said it was a pilot kit from it's a Piper Cub.
Yep.
So
looks great.
Besides that, everything else is a scratch build.
He now has a coordinated turn Cub, and the running joke was we were going to ask, when you were asking for setups, we were going to send Chad Capper over to program your radio. You got to listen to the podcast to understand that joke. All right, question number 30. How long have you been in the hobby for?
Oh, let's see. 22 years.
22 years. Nice. Nicely done.
Or thereabouts.
All right. Ooh,
I usually say over 20.
Over 20? Yeah, that's we're getting to that point in life. Mustang or Spitfire? This is an important question.
Oh, man. Oh. It depends on what I want to do with it. Mustang.
Oh, darn it!
Sorry, dude.
I have the Spitfire up on the website right now. We'll talk about that one later on. Darn. You know what? I don't think there's the perfect answer for that one, but it's just some of the lines. I have to say, I love the lines on the Spitfire. Vanilla or chocolate?
I do. Dark chocolate.
Ooh, there you go. Yeah, I'm that way now too. Nothing sweet for this guy.
I do like the lines of the Spitfire. I think the Spitfire is a better looking airplane.
What was the most destructive crash you've ever had?
Oh, most destructive. I gotta think now, because there have been a couple good ones. When the Valkyrie went in, it looked bad, but I mean, most of it was still holding together. The nose was shot, but I think the Red Line, the most recent crash of the Red Line, well, the last crash of the Red Line, it was, it rekitted itself. I mean, the wing was off, the fuselage was in two pieces. One of the batteries was in the fuselage. One of the batteries was 30 feet away. There was brush stuck everywhere. There was wires all over it. The last crash of the Red Line definitely was the most destructive.
Nice. All right, so question 40 is a bit technical, and we're talking about batteries because I love asking. So you touched on this very lightly, but 3S, 4S, 6S, 8S, and would you prefer a single pack or a double pack?
Oh, wow. That's very application dependent.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, I hate to just, sort of lob it back, but it kind of is. I mean, if I'm going higher voltage, I would prefer, I think, fewer packs. If you can have one pack, that's ideal.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to have the losses in connections with plugs, and extra line runs with, wire lengths and everything.
Yeah.
So if you're going higher voltage, the fewer packs you can have, the better. That's not always feasible, but that's ideal.
So then I'll throw out another hypothetical. When you're designing stuff now, you've got your ideal battery. Are you designing now to say, I'm designing an aircraft that's going to fit this battery? Or is it just, I have to be able to have all the freedom I can to design?
I think I lean more towards the freedom to design side of things. I mean, in the back of my mind, when I was doing all my jets, I had this
This guy with
established
some
power setup.
the guy bringing
What?
some 6S packs to Flight Fest for some crazy reason.
Yeah, right. Um, so, but it like I don't know the Stearman I designed more around the Power Pack C, which could be
Yeah,
flown I think on a 3 or 4 cell.
yeah.
Um, and but my jets were all designed around 4 cell 70 mil EDF because I had a lot of them at the time, uh, and 4 cells cheaper than 6 cell.
Yes,
But
sir.
I think I maybe more lean towards designing towards something that's affordable
Cool.
in general. Yes.
Nice. All right, question 20. Glow, gas, or electric? What's your flavor?
Oh, electric.
Yeah.
I've only flown one glow plane ever, and that was the Stick 40 trainer that I mentioned at the beginning. I built it out, all balsa plans, the whole deal. It was powered by an 040, glow motor, and after 1 or 2 flights, a tree ate it, and I just did not have it in me to rebuild that toothpick. Um, so yeah,
I hear you. The
I like watching gas.
Yeah, and that's a long-term goal for me. Like we're talking 2021, but this aircraft behind me, the Waco is going to go
Hmm.
Waco. It's going to go electric because I cleaned the thing off, and every time I touched it, it was a glow plane, and every time I touched a
Yep,
nitro motor, right, I'm like, ah, just covered. So,
yep.
question 21. We'll
Whenever
get
I'm
there,
at
Lee. I'll
the
ask that question.
whenever at
Go ahead.
whenever I'm at the big field out at Prado, where most of the guys fly gas, after I watch them fly and they're wiping down their planes, I'm just thinking, I don't need that in my life right now. On the other hand, it is really, really cool when the guy brings out this like 8 foot span Hellcat with a 5 cylinder radial in it. It's just insane.
Yeah, and I'm the same way that the flying field that I will be flying the big airplane at is like a half an hour away, and all I can think of is just this thing is going to be in my
Hmm.
car. It will never come into the house. If it does, I got to wipe it all down because I don't want the smell in the house. And just that's where electric is just beautiful. So there we go,
Yeah,
electric.
William, yes. Future goals are definitely turbine for me, but I need a garage before I even think about that.
Yeah, and then that was there too, and it was and that's like way down the road because
Oh yeah, a whole other.
after we talked to Pete from Horizon about all his adventures, I'm like, oh boy, but that's getting expensive. That's getting really expensive. All right, you've crashed. Do you grab tape, hot glue, or CA first?
Tape.
Nice. Yep, tape works really good.
That's assuming that the crash is even remotely recoverable, which isn't always
Good
a
point.
guarantee for me.
Good point. Good point. So Lee asked, and actually, Lee, this is now question 42 on the list. So, floats or skis on snow? It's a trick question for
On
Ben,
on,
right?
I've
On
never
snow.
flown floats or skis or snow,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna say skis.
Nice. Yes, I haven't tried. Nope, that's true. I've done both. I've done the floats on the little UMX Timber, the 2017 Plane of the Year by RC Afterhours. But
I would love to do a float plane at some point, but
yeah,
again, I don't have. There's a lake about just across the street, but we're not allowed to fly there. So
there you go. Yeah, I know. I was last summer. I brought my plane out, and then I realized the place we were staying at was an active seaplane base, air base, and I'm like, well, so much for that idea. So I took out the RC boat. What about grabbing a bag first? Yeah, that's Martin's comment. Yeah, yeah. When you yard sale it. So, all right. I like
yeah,
this question a lot. Number 3. Name someone who's changed the hobby for you.
I mean the easy answer is Bixler,
Yeah.
because I mean it. There's a lot of people. Orchard, um, Spawns. my dad. But as far as what I would call a massive shift in what I was planning to do in the hobby, before I started watching, actually, I'll say um, David Vindestall,
There you go.
because he was my entry vector to flight test. Watching his FPV to space and back,
Yeah.
and then the suggested videos, linked over to flight test. At the time, I had ideas for 3D printing aircraft, which is still a thing, and even more of a thing now.
I know, and some of David's earlier designs as well. So, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
David Vizzo, who's going to be a dad in a couple months too. Congratulations,
Right.
Dave.
I loved his announcement. That was hilarious.
That was
Congratulations,
good.
David.
That was really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those watching the stream, yes, it did stutter a little bit, but it's back. All right. So a few more questions, and then we're going to jump into some of the new products, and I want to talk about this bad boy behind us. All right. Number 39, bacon yank or rudder?
What's rudder?
I was going to give you an explanation. Never mind. You punked me. That's awesome. Awesome. All right. A few more questions, and then we're going to talk about some of the products out that have been released. And we've been through that one. 25. La, 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 la. 34. Mode.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why bacon yank, because I started in slope, and slopers don't have rudders.
Yeah. And it's funny, it's
Most of them.
when I first started flying too, I very rarely used a rudder, and now I kicked myself after the A10 for not using the rudder. So, unnecessary repairs because my thumbs were lazy, but now I know, and now I work on it. All right, number 34, what mode are you?
Mode 2.
There you go. All right, then we'll finish off. Okay, here we go. We know the answer to this question, but it's fixed wing. Are you fixed wing, rotary, or multi-rotor? Have you ever flown anything besides airplanes?
Yes. So probably 95% fixed wing, but I do own 3 multi-rotors now. I have actually a David Vindestall tricopter LR, and I have a Diatone GT2 quad, which is currently dead. But only because of one ESC, so it'll fly again. And then I also got gifted a Mavic Mini for Christmas.
Hey, there you go. Nice.
So I did try a helicopter once many years ago. Didn't go well.
It's on my bucket list, but for 2020, I really had to commit, and it's sitting back there. So, all right. And the last question I'm going to ask you is number 8. Do you pinch, or are you a thumbs pilot?
Actually, both.
Hybrid?
It is situation for me. It is situation dependent. If I am flying something more relaxing, like one of my slopers, or the Cub, or the Stearman, I'm usually thumbing it. But if I'm flying something that needs more precision control, like any of the jets, or one of my fast PSS slopers, which can dive at over 100 miles an hour without a motor, that's fun. I'm definitely pinching the stick, because I need precision. I need to make sure that is not going where I don't want it to go.
Makes sense. Yeah, usually, people have noticed. So it's like a pinch on the ailerons and thumb on the throttle. I don't know. It's just where my hands are comfortable. There were a couple other little fun questions, things like IPA and stuff like that, but we're not going to worry about that. Okay, we're going to step in. The first question I have to ask the world, is it Waco or Waco? And I've been corrected, but I actually went online before I shot the video last week and looked, and they said it was the company came out with something, but it's like someone said it reminds with taco, and I'm like, now is that taco or taco? And so I'm like,
Waco.
Hey, Waco?
Yeah.
Not Waco, but Waco.
I've heard,
or like almost like Wacko, but without the H.
I've definitely heard it. I don't think it is Wacko.
Yeah.
It's definitely not Wacko. I grew up thinking and hearing and knowing that it was Waco.
Yeah, not
But
Texas.
maybe
Yeah.
that's because because of Texas. But I think from
So
what I've heard, it's Waco.
Waco? I'll go with Waco. It's
Yeah.
easier. So behind me is, and check out my video, check out the photos on social media. It's a Pica 1/5 scale Waco. Waco. I don't know. I'm gonna get butchered anyhow. It's like DJI and DJI. What's it? Someone's probably pinging me saying WH-WAH-CO. See, that's how fast social media works. So Waco. There you go. So
Waco.
1/5 scale. I'm going electric. It had like a 150 nitro motor in it before. It's old. I'm like the fourth owner on this airplane. It had a fabric covering on it. I'm going with an ultra coat in bright yellow. It almost matches the cowl. I'll do a sympathetic cosmetic, and the next big job for me in this airplane, besides going over all the ribs and everything, is checking is cutting in a bay on the top. So I've been leaning on my little social circle, and asking a lot of people who work with balsa a lot of questions. So this will be my first covering job in 20 plus years. I probably built that LT40, the SIG LT40, back in like 97, 98, and it took some time. So whoever built this plane did a beautiful job. Pretty well confirmed it's a real kit. It might not be, but the way some of the stuff is shaped, it looks like it's a proper kit. Went to my great hobby store here in Ottawa, dropped down they were super, and I put down some money on it. And it was funny because I know if anybody listened, I had talked about wanting to focus, and well, there it is. And this thing just happened. It just kind of, the owner emailed me after I asked some questions about another airplane, said, I've got this project plane that I don't think will ever fly, or I don't have time himself. And he's a full-on scratch build, or some of the stuff he was showing me that he built. Like huge chipmunk plane. It looked gorgeous, and so that's what he does. Cool. So I'm like, I can handle this thing. And by the way, 1/5 scale airplane with a 72-inch wings. I think the fuselage is about 50 inches, and the size, it's when you get up to 1/5 and all that, like a quarter scale aircraft might fit in the car, but the vertical height on the tail would never clear my car, right? So this is as big as I'm prepared to go, right? We don't think about that until I get a hatchback, I guess. No. Until I get a hatchback, but so I have to take it apart. But it was the size of the tail, your vertical, your rudder. But it looks good. And it looks really good when I took off the skin. And that was, like I said, it was a fabric that was painted. So that's how old this design is. Wow. But yeah, the real cool thing too was Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, did you consider doing solar techs?
I didn't know about it. Now I know about it. Okay. I'm going to try. If this was going to be a gas-powered or nitro airplane, I probably would have done it. But because I'm going electric, I decided to do it. And I saw some photos of them, and I thought they looked really nice with them more shiny. It looked more aluminum-like. Like, obviously, the real plane's got aluminum cladding on it, I think. I think so. It's old enough now, but they looked really nice when they were shining. And I found the other stuff. But next one, I no longer had got this in there, and I was working away and talking with Stuart about some of his projects, because he's doing a bunch of stuff on his social media about restoring old aircraft. And I said, okay, this will be done. I'll fly this airplane. I'll love it and I'll enjoy it. But the next one on my radar, my hit list, will be a World War I biplane, which will be a gasser. And so that one, cool. I could see having a fabric and a full-on paint job and everything. Yeah. And just restore that one. So it's a whole new learning experience. I love my foam board because it's you make a mistake and you're like, oh, I'll just go get another $2 sheet. This thing, the 10 meters or 32 feet of covering, I won't want to tell you what it costs, right? And that's a lot. As much as I love a big airplane, when you got to buy 4 full-size standard digital servos, whoo. So
it's true.
Lee Davis says fabric is more scale, and I completely agree. And I probably made the wrong
Yeah.
call on it, but I made a call right away and said, no, I'm going to go with this stuff. One, because I want to learn about it. I haven't done a covering in a long time, and I like some of the advantages of doing the cover. So like I said, the next big task will be to do the cut and the cut the top of it and put in a battery bay, build it all up. And sorry, I whacked the microphone there. Build up the internal so I have a battery bay location and make some quick other little modifications. And otherwise, the plane I have to look over the wing. The previous owner felt he might have had a warp issue, but I just noticed there were two bolt points for the wing struts, and I'm wondering if he had got one wrong, and that might have set the wing off skew, because he said the last time he flew it, he had to throw a bunch of trim into it. I put the wings onto my bench, and they looked nice and level. So once I pull the covers off it, I'll be able to set the servos up. I'm going to 3D print some servo mounts. So traditionals, they were putting the servos, vertically. Well, nowadays we like to lay them down, right? So I'm going to 3D print some stuff, and, I'm going to make it my plane. But immediately when I saw it, I was like, this is an Andre project. So we'll have some fun.
That's cool.
Something a little different.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The plastic covering will be lighter for you as an electric.
Yeah.
It'll help.
Yeah. And
Solartex will definitely be heavy.
Yeah, and it's funny because I weighed the aircraft before and I'll weigh it afterwards, but it might be at that point I might have done some modifications as far as internal. And it's funny because a family member saw the photos I'd posted, and the next day I had a bag full of balsa bits at my door. And I'm like, this is like gold, because there's just a bunch of little, I just need, mainly, I only spotted a couple ribs in the back with some damage from grabbing it, I guess, over the years. So it's in really good shape. And then I will go through it. And obviously the modification for the battery bay and everything will take a little bit of work and a little bit of design. And I'm going to go through. The nice part about taking the cover off is I did find a couple ribs have separated over the years. Like I said, this is a 20-year build, a 20-year aircraft. So I'll get in there with some CA and re-stick them to all their formers and everything and rebuild it and everything. And yeah, we'll see. And it's funny, Lee is asking about, did a cub with my dad when I was a kid, and the fabric and dope made us all dopey. And I guess that's the nice thing with the solo stuff, is now you can iron it on. And that's where my misinterpretation of the fabric was. I said, it's middle of winter, it's -20. I think like the other day was -10 Fahrenheit. So it's like, there's no way I want to be in the garage trying to do this, right? So that's where I made a couple key
Solartex
decisions.
irons on just like monocoat.
And you can get it in color, or you can get it in white and paint it, correct?
Yeah, the ones that if you want to paint it, you get the silvery gray version. It's basically already primered, and it's also the best. And that one's you would do for it's got a fuel sealer in it already.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, right?
I've done a couple slopers. Covered in Solartex, and it actually irons around compound curves better than plastic covering.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because I looked at the work. Whoever did this did a really nice job, but then I realized it was painted. I'm like, oh, okay, so you probably, so like when I do the covering, when I do the detail, its accent color is a dark blue. Well, the real airplane with the same serial numbers is based off an actual 5, a 2-seater that flies out of St. Catharines, Ontario. And it's got black accents. But I looked at some nice examples, and they rather than wrapping around the wing, they just put the color accents across the front, the leading edges. I'm like, okay, that's simple. The only advantage to putting a little extra layer around the edges is you protect your wings. So I just made double up on the yellow just to protect it from scuffs and bumps and all this stuff, because obviously this aircraft is going to be, this airplane is going to be, a bit of a handle to transport, but I've already got a storage spot for it here in the hangar, so it'll be nice and protected. And like I said, I had to focus on 2020 and said, I want one airplane. I want one airplane that I can put a lot of my energy, and I don't have to do it like right away. I can work at this thing little by little, and I'm going to learn some skills. So yeah, so it's pretty cool. Yeah. So I'm excited. I know I saw a question there. Go ahead. What was it? Which one?
Oh, I saw a question. I think William asked. Yeah, William. I have not tried dynamic soaring.
All right. So what's dynamic soaring then?
Dynamic soaring is a form of slope soaring, but instead of flying back and forth side to side on the front side of a hill in the wind blowing at you, you fly on the backside of a hill in the lee of the wind, and you're flying in a circle, in a pattern that basically it dives down into the dead zone, sort of behind the hill where the wind sort of shears over the top, and you then shoot back up into the wind with the belly of the aircraft facing the oncoming wind over the hill, and you gain more airspeed at the top, and then you dive back down into the dead zone, and you just fly this circular pattern, gaining more speed from gravity and airspeed, gravity and airspeed. The current world record is 545 miles an hour.
Mind-numbing.
Dynamic soaring. No.
So you have to have the optimal spot from a pilot perspective to observe your aircraft then.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, you're standing on the top of a mountainside. The place where they set the record is Bird Springs Pass, actually here in California. And it's like elevation 5,000 feet. So it's not that high, but it's also not sea level. And I want to say the wind conditions at the time were around 60 miles an hour, maybe gusting to 80.
Holy.
And the guy, Spencer Lisenby is the guy's name, who designed and flew this aircraft called the Transonic DP. It's a 3.3 meter single piece wing. It does not disassemble. It is molded carbon in one piece, and he's got airfoils that are like designed and optimized at the Stuttgart University. People helped him design transonic airfoils, and it's got this, I think, a 22 aspect ratio wing, something insane. And yeah, he's going at that altitude. I think the math works out to be like almost 0.8 Mach. It's insane.
Oh, I'm.
It's at least in the 0.7 range.
That's craziness.
Yeah.
That is craziness. All right, we're gonna jump into some new products. Don't have a whole lot to talk about, but we'll flip over to the websites, and here we go. So while we were away, E-flite came out with their first 6S Warbird in a P-51D. It looks really good, to be honest. And all the reviews seem pretty good, but it does have a bit of a pricey price tag. I mean, it's a $600 US Warbird, which is a little crazy, but I think for them it's an interesting move as far as pushing their 6S. But they've had last year they rolled out several jets, so I think now they have pilots who are customers who have the power on hand or have the equipment on hand.
Oh yeah.
And just wanted to go with it. It's a 1.5 meter wingspan. It will take your 6S 3,200 to 7,000 milliamp batteries. Obviously, it's got their new smart tech for their gear, which is pretty cool. Smart technology. So that's the ESC telemetry, the battery taken care of. I appreciate where they're going with that technology. I'm just not sure I could afford it or willing to afford it at this point, but they've got some really neat stuff coming out. And then on the other end of that, so they rolled out this one.
What prop does it come with?
Sorry, what prop? It is, it's a good question. Is it going to be in my specs? Yes, it's a 15 by 15
it looks like
by
it's a
11.
four-blade.
It's a 4-blade, 15-inch by 15.
Okay, good.
15 by 5, 11 4-blade prop. So, like I said, their optimal battery is a 5,000, a 6S 5000, which is pretty on par. And obviously, it's got the smart. You can get the bind and fly or the plug and play, but still really nice looking airplane. Louis the Fifth, I think, is the Louis the Fourth. I think I'm trying to see what it is. Yeah. Yep. So from World War II. But it's funny because they went from that, and then they came out with their little UMX Ultrix bind and fly basic, which looks like a riot, an absolute riot. Little twin thing. So think of their Delta Ray, but a whole lot more punchy. or even some of the transition aircrafts, like their Converse or whatever. So the VTOL aircraft without the moving part, right? And I think it's just got these tiny little props and everything. What's the battery on this thing? It's probably just like a little 2S. No, sorry, it's a 1S 500. Holy! So the same kind of power you run on your little Inductrix, they are, but they're brushless motors. They're 2 brushless motors. So that's still pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
What's that box in for?
To fly all that on a 1S, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So $130 US. I don't know what the flight times are. I'm almost surprised it's not a 2S, but I'm sure they're just trying to keep the weight down, actually. I'm kind of curious. Let's see what this thing weighs in at. Flying weight, wingspan 13.5 inch. 1S 500. Does it show me the weight?
Really, only a 500 1S.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be bigger than that.
Yeah, but it's kind of, I think they were just trying to keep the, here we go. Flying weight, 65 grams. I think they're trying to keep.
Oh my goodness!
To like buy the cost to buy like I guess if you wanted more power or more runtime, run 2 packs, which is what they do on a lot of the multi rotors. But 65 grams. The thing must be just a ride in the wind.
That's fine. Yeah, that's tiny. That's light.
Yeah, so that's gonna be, but it looked pretty fun to fly. So $130. That's it's cool. I'm surprised you wouldn't have seen it in 2S, but whatever. All right, this one we've been waiting for. The Flight Test Spitfire. Now this is the redesign done by John. Obviously I've got the Spitfire from David above me. So this is using more of John's Overstreet's and I said it right, Overstreet versus Oversteer. I kept doing that. More of the curve builds, and I'm really bad. I've yet to build one of his planes, and I've got to just to experience some of the changes, pulling the foam and rolling the foam and everything. But it looks like a really nice aircraft. And
and when you see the pictures of his painted ones, they're just gorgeous. Does a great job.
Yeah, and things like going to vinyl on the canopy makes a big difference for what this aircraft is. You know what? And then I forgot to talk about the Flight Test released aircraft. Now this is something that we knew about, but we weren't allowed talking about. Flight Test now have 2 of their own ready to fly, not ready to fly. Plug and play. Plug and play is the correct word in the sense they've got a Cessna and the Beaver. My preference is on the Beaver. And this is kind of neat and fun. So these are brushless. I think they're 2S 500s, if I remember correctly. The only question I didn't know.
Yeah, I think all the way down to a 350, actually.
Yeah, a little tiny. What I don't know, and I asked the question and no one got back to me, was what connector were they using? But we'll find out as soon as as soon as the product comes out. What's really cool is they come back and they say the optional flaps. So you could technically get, and it comes with the floats, you could probably get something really fun. And I think the Beaver is going to slow down really nice. And the other one was their Cessna. So I will have to, there it is there. And then obviously we will eventually see their little Grumman Goose eventually. So I'll throw up the links in the description for the video. Bill Decker is asking which one, how big? So the little guys, the little plug and plays, the little foam plug and plays from Flight Test are 640 millimeters. And the Spitfire, if I go back, the Spitfire had a wingspan, because I got distracted. I totally scrolled out there. 1,200 millimeters, 1,220 millimeter on the Spitfire. So that's not bad at all. It's a little bigger than I think David's design. 48 inches, 48-inch wingspan.
It should be the same.
Yeah. So really the body's just changed, a little bit of stylizing, and getting rid of the turtle decks cut out from the poster board, which is probably one of the bigger revisions to do to these aircraft, which is something that Josh had talked about years ago when they jumped to the new foam. And I think it looks great. And then John uses his vinyl cutter to do the coverings, all the windows and everything, all the canopies, which looks great. So They will sell a bunch of these at Edgewater and Flight Fest. Yes, they will, Bill, because they look gorgeous, and there are tons of others in the field coming up. All right, the next aircraft, we're going to Hobby King, and this one kind of caught my eye. It is an HK Tiger Moth, 1400 millimeter, 55.1 inch ARF, and it looks pretty neat. It's nice in yellow. I don't know what it is about me and yellow airplanes, but it's $130. Yeah, it's a really nice. Is it a foam plane? I'm trying. It's lightweight, high quality covering. It is a balsa construction, which suddenly is not offensive to me for whatever reason. 3,000 grams loaded up, so it takes like a 750 motor or a .42 to 0.7. Oh yeah, a 2-stroke or 4-stroke motor, and it's full control ailerons, elevator, rudders. So it looks really nice. So it's kind of neat to see. Now I haven't talked about the I don't even want to really get into this, but UAS remote identification. You guys, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to study this a little bit more before, and maybe we'll even... Years ago, we had Brendan Shanahan from DGI, who's their legal affairs guy. Maybe we got to pull him in and have a discussion about some of this stuff. I know Josh and the boys were down talking to the FAA in Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show and did a really good job of representing the hobby and as far as our concerns in the hobby. So obviously the biggest thing I want to point out for this thing is they are still did the FAA, not the FAA, your AMA guys, they want everybody to hold on the comments before they have a chance to really study everything and give their recommendations, I think was the last bit of communication I had seen, if I'm correct.
I'm not sure. I've seen that they've got a template out, I think, for the AMA, and a few other groups have put out templates. The thing is, I mean, I don't think that there's any limitation on how many comments you can submit.
Yep.
I don't know how it plays out when they see multiples from this, same name. Personally, I took a few days and wrote out a rather long set of responses, and I actually submitted them as like 4 different comments grouped by more concise topic.
Yep.
So that each comment itself wasn't super long to wade through. So that was actually a suggestion that Bruce Simpson from Australia or New Zealand suggested.
Close there.
It's where I first heard the suggestion. I won't say he invented it, but
yeah, no, and it makes sense. It makes total sense. So the open for comments until March 2nd, so that date is still approaching on us. So I will take some time, and I will because my perspective obviously is going to be slightly different, but I've got a feeling we're going to see the same thing here in Canada. Part of me is rejoining my flying club is because of that, because I'm at a flying club, I should technically, if something goes crazy, I will still have a spot to fly. Plus, I want to fly something bigger. And if there's a soccer tournament going on at the field, well, I can go to my flying field. So, it's crazy how things are changing. Flight Fest dates. So I don't want to dwell on this much longer. I want to get more information so I can comment and leave my comments. But love your opinion. Love that a logical response. Because there are people on the other end who will theoretically be taking in the information and looking for those responses. And obviously, if you're well articulated, they come back. Varied comments, like Ben mentioned. Yep, there you go, Bill. Bill is in agreement. So the only other important news...
The fewer of the same thing that they get, it will make yours stand out.
Yeah. And like John Davis was saying, that AMA put out a canned response, which is fine. So yeah, and we're almost wrapping up, Ben. It's all good. Basically, Flight Fest has been announced July 16th, I think, the weekend of the 16th. So a couple of us will be there, and we'll have some fun and everything. So on that note, Ben, I think we can wrap up this show. So I'll cue the extra music, and I will say dude, it was awesome to talk to you. Thank you for hanging out and answering all our questions. Thank you for hanging out while we discussed some of the new products and everything. Thank you to fans. Thank you for the subscribers. Thank you for everybody who's commenting and everything, and all the people on social media. We'll be back on it. I've got my next couple guests lined up. We're going to get a couple special people on the show and everything. But again, hey, mission accomplished. I got Ben on the show finally. So thank you, buddy. Have a great weekend. And everybody, thanks, and keep subscribing and keep on flying. Good night.
Thanks.
Bye.